Hey all you cats and kittens and all you non-binary fittens, it's your boy, DBiddles. Welcome back to the Brick Edition. Now just in case you're new here, let's go over how this goes. You see, normally I build plastic models of mecha anime robots while talking about the related anime, and then I talk about some bigger idea. I build a bot, and I chat. I call that series ChatBots. But in the brainstorming process, I get a bunch of these ideas that don't really make for a full video, even though I still want to talk about them. So I take all those little scraps and bring them here to this alternate edition of my show to talk about while I build a robot out of Brand X interlocking construction bricks. Hence, the Brick Edition. And now you know, so now let's go. Hey, I've been watching that My Adventures with Superman show on HBO Max, and it's really charming. Sorry, not HBO Max, it's just Max now, isn't it? I keep forgetting that Warner Discovery has to have a huge brand shakeup every goddamn week. God, I'll probably have to rewrite this opener at least twice before I actually post my video. But anyways, while the show garnered a lot of initial positive, read as horny internet attention early on from the redesign of Lois Lane as a slender, tan-skinned, short-haired tomboy with a hyper-energetic and ambitious attitude, you know, I gotta confess that I was actually really excited about the premise itself. Okay, sure, it's another Superman show, nothing new there. But you know what made this one interesting was it promised to be a show that focused more heavily on Superman's friendly and wholesome interactions with his supporting cast. Now sure, I like hot cartoon ladies as much as the next internet-dwelling dork. Be they short-haired tomboys, giant mommy-dom vampires, muscly green career women, magic owl-themed party aunties, gothic demon furries, gunslinging bespectacled witches, overly friendly anime milfs, plus-size elves, or gender-fluid meme-based video game villainesses. Make no mistake, I see the appeal. But, you know, again, I was really stoked for a down-to-earth, loves his mommy and daddy, true to his friends, soft boy interpretation of Superman getting to go mainstream. 'Cause while Superman's a huge cultural figure, most contemporary non-comic reading audiences kinda just write Superman off as a boring basic bitch. Hell, even a lot of long-time comic readers do this too. And you know, I get it. I did also when I first started getting into comics. The bad boy heroes, the brooding, troubled, edgy guys who wear dark clothes and perch on top of gargoyles to look down on the city and frown while having angsty internal monologues. Those guys tend to be a little more sexy and exciting. Yeah, I get it. I like anti-heroes and guys with issues as much as the next internet-dwelling dork. Let's face it, goths are just hot and we all want to fuck them. But as I've matured, I've come to really appreciate wholesome, polite, soft boy heroes a whole lot more, and Superman in particular. Because look, as much as I like Batman and his sort, the real world has enough guys with issues trying to fix the world, and most of the real world ones end up being pretty bad at fixing things. Assholes with messiah complexes can be compelling, but they're not exactly unique anymore, right? And if we're honest with ourselves, we only like those characters when they're characters on the screen, and not when they're people in real life. Everyone wants to fuck the goths, but the real-world goths are usually able to mature past their moody, broody baggage and only put on the goth attire for special occasions. But there's no fucking way any of us could put up with a Rick Sanchez or a Dr. Gregory House or a Tony Stark in real life if they were constantly acting how they do in fiction. Or if we could, it'd be as some kind of insecure, toxic, codependent relationship. But you know what you don't see near enough of in real life? Nice guys who treat everyone well, who when given power, use it completely altruistically, and not just to address their own personal hang-ups. Just some good old wholesome guys and gals and NB pals who don't have a whole bunch of emotional baggage or traumatic past, but who unironically want to do good in ways that aren't morally gray just because they're cool like that. I don't want the majority of fiction to be about such characters, but I think at least a few prominent examples of such characters are refreshing. Just a few examples of people demonstrating that you don't have to be bitter, misanthropic, and forceful to be strong. That you're in fact more happy and likable when you're being kind and doing good for its own sake. And I mean, most of us are kind of over that Jesus guy since his fanbase sucks so much, so why not get on board the Superman train? The Jesus fanbase is legitimately responsible for ruining their own fandom, and there's no one else to blame. Do not at me. And like, really, hypothetically, if there was a guy who had basically every superpower and barely any weaknesses, wouldn't you kinda want him to be an uncomplicated, too good to be true, larger-than-life, ultra-nice guy who rescues kittens out of trees, smiles and waves to people as he soars by, and then goes home to his simple-living, working-class parents and asks for another golly-shucks slice of this homemade rhubarb pie? A lot of you newbies to the superhero genre are all excited by characters like Omni-Man and Homelander and other versions of the "what if Superman was evil actually" trope, but as a longtime comic reader, I gotta tell you, it's really not that unique. Not that there's anything wrong with deconstructing the concept of a superhero. I'm a big fan, to be sure. But between Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, Miracle Man, Squadron Supreme, Irredeemable, Martial Law, Peter J. Tomasi's The Mighty, Injustice, Captain Hero from Drawn Together, Kieran Gillian's Uber, Black Summer, Super God, One Punch Man, Bomb Queen, Peacemaker, Sentry, Punisher, Dark Avengers, The Crime Syndicate of America, and basically everything written by Mark Millar, I think I'm well served on the "superheroes are secretly assholes" premise. I think I just like some nice guy Superman with a side of Deku and All Might, and maybe a teensy sprinkle of Steven Universe, thank you. The most important of Superman's many powers is being legitimately kind and generous, despite all the rest of his powers insulating him from any consequences he would face if he was anything less than that. And so, Superman stories should be about him using his powers to maximize the amount of good he can do in the world. And if you can think of some ideas on how Superman could do that don't involve fighting supervillains, awesome. You should write that story. That's a Superman story that needs to exist. Anyways, the show's just fucking adorable, man, and I love the main trio. I have some small gripes about how a lot of the villains are being reinterpreted as all having MCU tech suits instead of superpowers. I really dig Mr. Mxyzptlk's makeover, that's long overdue. But ultimately, it's just some nice, feel-good superhero action with some appealing aesthetics, and yes, a quality waifu. Actually, a couple of them now that Vicky Vale has shown up. Oh, and alternate universe girl Jimmy Olsen, she was cute too. Alright, enough self-indulgent cartoon talk. So, remember in my first Brick Edition video, I covered a story that I had thought was months stale at the time? You know, the whole Bud Light scandal? Well, there's been some developments as our old friend, Kid Rock, emphasis on the old part, sarcastic quotes around the friend part, Kid Rock has been cited guzzling Bud Light in public, after throwing that hissy bitch fit over Anheuser-Busch, having the fucking temerity to try to advertise their products by sending a single custom can to a single trans influencer, Dylan Mulvaney. This, in the midst of the conservative movement's attempts to boycott the brand as part of their commitment to the mantra of "Go woke, go broke," which in this particular instance has actually lasted a lot longer than I would have imagined it. Now remember, this story only started in early April of this year, so that's only about 5 months between then and now, where Kid Rock has been spotted swilling this dog water again. But the right have been surprisingly consistent with this one point for that length of time. And I say surprisingly because they freak out about dumb shit all the time and then quickly lose interest. To hop back onto my cartoon talk for just a brief second to illustrate, remember when the right all got positively shook for like a whole week over that stupid Little Demon series on FX about Danny DeVito playing as Satan and his actual real-life daughter playing Satan's daughter? And then like all the normies watched a few episodes of it, thought it was okay but nothing amazing, and then everybody, the haters and the normies, promptly forgot about it afterwards because it was just nothing too interesting? Yeah, they didn't quite do that with this one. They're still pretty big mad over, again, I'll remind you, a single goddamn beer can. And when you bring this up to them, they like to meme about it. Oh, the woke left are calling us out for being mad about beer cans, but here's a Wojak to illustrate them all positively melting down over syrup and rice. Which honestly isn't the 4D chess move that they think it is, but is actually a double-barreled cell phone. Because not only are they admitting that they're mad over something incredibly fucking stupid, but if we can go back and look at the brands in question that they're referencing without their magic lens of alternative history, nobody on the progressive end actually got mad over the whole Aunt Jemima or Uncle Ben thing. There were no celebrity TikToks or crying blue-haired feminists shouting about these things. The brands themselves just kind of changed their mascots on their own as a cynical attempt at clout sharking off the tragic George Floyd incident. That's right. Those brands used a brutal police murder and the subsequent civil rights protests as a means of trying to advertise their stupid, shitty products. And when that happened, the progressives all kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, well, I guess that's a good thing. And the only people who were freaking out then were the conservatives, who apparently all had long emotional attachments to corporate iconography, like Syrup Lady, Rice Man, and that girl on the butter. Apparently, there might even be a bunch of them that are still holding on to the old syrup bottles, but are buying new Aunt Jemima's syrup, and then pouring the new syrup into the old bottles as some kind of ritualistic spiritual owning of the libs that, still puts money into the pockets of the woke corporation that changed the mascot in the first place. If you or someone you know is in fact doing this, and it's not just some satirical bullshit that I saw on Facebook, I encourage you not to stop. This is exactly like buying war bonds, and you're definitely doing your part to win the culture war. Just go back out there and mindlessly consume all your problematic faves. You're definitely making all of us non-weirdos really, really fucking mad about it. But surely, Kid Rock's act of damning hypocrisy on behalf of hateful conservatives will make them all reflect on what silly, uncharitable, polarized... No, of course it won't. Everyone knows that hateful people don't care about consistency or truth or facts or logic. Hate is entirely a feelings-based motivator. And to borrow a phrase, feelings don't care about facts. And their feelings are simply... Trans bad. Bud Light liked trans. Bud Light bad. Kid Rock hate trans. Kid Rock good. The end. They will not meaningfully turn on Kid Rock because it was never about him or Bud Light. It's all about hating trans people. That's it. This wasn't the first time I heard a bit of news that made me want to follow up on the Bud Light controversy. There was some that came out after my video. But I'm only now touching upon it again in light of the Kid Rock thing, as it helps to illustrate my point. Because obviously, Bud Light wasn't the only one catching heat for this whole mess, but even if they were, they're a billion-dollar brand institution. They'll be fine. And even if they were bankrupted by this whole debacle, who gives a fuck? It's a company that makes a pretty mid product, let's be real. But more importantly, Dylan herself definitely received all kinds of negative attention in the form of harassment and threats, both online and in person. Harassment and threats because a big brand reached out to her with an itty-bitty one-time-only promotional deal for just a small, insignificant little crumb of hype from her and her followers. They reached out because they know that the queer community likes beer, and they wanted to advertise and appeal to a bigger market share through her. Her being a tiny, insignificant micro-celeb who most of us are only hearing about because of this disproportionate backlash to her just existing. And when pressed in interviews about it, did Anheuser-Busch stand in solidarity with this person they chose to work with? This person they chose to exploit in hopes of demo growth? This person who had a target painted on their back due to involvement with this huge brand who reached out to her to use her image for their own enrichment? Did they apologize in any way to her? Will they apologize now that Kid Rock is exposed for the liar he is? Or did they backtrack when pressed? Were they silent in defense of Dylan? Do they simply have no intention of apologizing or compensating Dylan for the harm done to her? Are they simply about-facing, abandoning any principles, and groveling to fucking bigots because their bottom line took a little hit? Were their rainbows as hollow as all the other rainbows covering every corporate logo during the month of June? I think we all know the answer. Despite the slow progress and acceptance, despite the many gains that were hard-fought and hard-won, and despite the narratives that conservatives try to peddle, the queer community is not as sinister and threatening as the right make them out to be, and corporate advocacy is as fair weather as their bottom line permits. The principles on display show that the only consistent values here are profit and apathy. Corporations aren't woke, corporations aren't people, and they don't have ideology besides a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. Wokeness is just marketing, and corporations only use it because there's a bigger percentage of people to whom that appeals to than to whom it repels. There are plenty of fully legitimate reasons to hate corporations, but creeps always make wokeness their final straw because their bigotry is stronger than their sense of ethics or their outrage at exploitation. And the thing that I'm actually mad about, because I am mad, isn't a bunch of hateful people getting upset about a single fucking commercial. It's that Anheuser-Busch caving to pressure sets a very poor precedent for everyone. Shitbags will now feel emboldened to be even shittier. Brands will be all the more willing to roll over to pressure from hate groups, and the LGBT community has that much more of a setback. As I said in my recent Guy King video, this is just the canary in the coal mine for the innumerable possibilities of what can happen to any of us if hate movements are allowed to persist or make gains. I mean, fuck! We just had that one lady in California get shot by some psycho just because she had a pride flag in the window of her small business. She wasn't even visibly queer herself. She had a husband and 9 children. She just expressed the opinion that people shouldn't be marginalized for their identities. And this mentally unwell person, who's been egged on by the likes of Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles and Tucker Carlson, killed a mother of 9 children. Injustice to one is injustice to all. Their cruelty is the point. That's why principled solidarity is so important. And I mean, do you really want to have it be said about you that you took an L from Kid fucking Rock of all people? Because I sure fucking don't. I hope Anheuser-Busch does go broke now. Not because they went woke, but because they let a bunch of goldfish-brained Nazis push them around. You didn't have to do this, Anheuser-Busch. You could have just done fucking nothing if you didn't give a shit. And now someone's hurt because of it. Now a bunch of people are hurt because of it. Fuck you. And I hope those same Nazis roast Kid Rock alive. I hope he slithers back to whatever hole of irrelevance he crawled out of, and I hope he spends the rest of his life wriggling in obscurity. You fucking deserve it, Kid Rock. You really do. I can't believe everyone involved on all fucking sides is taking an L from Kid fucking Rock, including the man himself. That's fucking embarrassing. But you know what L I will happily take? I'll gladly take one on my prediction about the Netflix adaptation of One Piece. Now, back in my Zeorhymer video, I went through a list of upcoming live-action anime adaptations, and I broke down what I thought the chances of them all being good was. Some I felt positive about, while others not so much, and definitely pretty low on that list, if not the lowest, was One Piece. Now, if you want my full reasoning for why, you should probably just go watch the video. I could really use the views. But since then, a lot of updates have occurred that have me and many others feeling just a little bit more optimistic. Actually, while I'm typing this, it's just 2 days away from the premiere, so I'm just going to keep going as I am as the present past DBiddles and talk a little bit more about this, and then at some point in the video my perspective will shift to future past DBiddles to update my thoughts after having watched the show, and that way you can have a whole authentic progressing thought process from me. Hey, look at me, I'm a reaction channel now. So the trailers have actually gotten pretty positive receptions from the fans, and watching them myself, I can see why. This definitely feels like it has the potential to be like a real adaptation, and not like some lame-o straight-to-video Sci-Fi Channel original adaptation nonsense. But then, so did Cowboy Bebop. Some of the effects are still a little shaky. The scene where Buggy the Clown demonstrates his Chop Chop powers kinda stood out as a pretty goofy visual, and Luffy's Gum Gum powers also look a little uncanny. But then, with this kind of cartoony, larger-than-life shit that borders on the edge of body horror, maybe that's the best you can hope for. I mean, it at least looks better than Saint Seiya did. Good luck on the next 5 films in that series, Sony. That said, the world of Netflix One Piece feels believable, and the characters and the tone feel pretty on point. The characters in particular are a high point, as they manage to capture the energy of the 5 original Straw Hats as I remember them. In fact, Eiichiro Oda, One Piece's mangaka, has been very positive in remarking on the work being put into adapting his opus, and while he stated that he has some notes, he seems to be hyping it up to his fans and asking them to give it a chance because this is the real deal. In particular, he's had some very kind words to say to Inaki Godoy, the actor cast as main character Luffy. Godoy stated that one of his key focuses for interpreting Luffy was in trying to capture his trademark smile, and he certainly projects a lot of really infectious joy in just the trailer alone. When Godoy asked Oda why he chose him to be Luffy, Oda remarked that Godoy made him laugh in the audition tape, and that he couldn't imagine anyone else playing as the character. Which is just a really sweet little earnest sentiment. Further, Luffy's anime seiyuu, Mayumi Tanaka, who's been voicing the character since 1999, and will be again in the Japanese dub of this Netflix show, ceremoniously gifted Godoy with his own straw hat. So, yeah, there's a lot of good vibes going into this. I'm now significantly less negative going into this experience than I was back when I posted my Zeorhymer video. And if I end up being wrong, I'm totally okay with that. Alright, this is Future Past DBiddles writing the script now. Hey, I bet you didn't know I could time travel between paragraphs, did ya? Yeah, I'm a Time Lord, bitch. Maybe now I'll get the respect I deserve. I've traveled through the 4th dimension at a rate of 1 second per second up to this point now, where I've seen all of Netflix One Piece and can update my thoughts. And regrettably, my Time Lord powers don't grant me the infallible gift of prophecy, because unfortunately, One Piece live action is quite excellent. I know, I'm sorry, I failed you all. It's good, everybody. It's unqualifiably good. Make way for the new standard for anime live-action adaptations, as Netflix One Piece is a thoroughly enjoyable work, both as a standalone and as an adaptation. Though you probably have already heard that by the time this video has gone up. Sadly, this version of myself is not with you now. Future present DBiddles is the one reading my transcribed thoughts. But to compare it to Netflix Bebop, just like that, the world of the story is beautifully realized, the cast is an absolute joy, and the entire crew clearly have a deep respecting admiration for the source material. In fact, production company Tomorrow Studios was behind both works. I think what makes this one work where the other one stumbled is a couple things. For one, Oda collaborated and consulted on the project from the go, while Watanabe only showed up sometime afterwards to criticize the liberties taken. So step 1 for future projects, get the person or people involved in the creation of the source material involved in the adaptations. See also Neil Gaiman's Sandman for further proof of results. For 2, while Bebop is a very deliberately tight and finite work which needed to be expanded upon to make a multi-season streaming series that Netflix would be interested in funding, One Piece is a huge and expansive work that actually benefits from being abbreviated to fit the multi-season streaming format. Obviously, they cut out a bunch of stuff, but while it's been a while since I sampled One Piece's anime and manga, I'm pretty sure that they also added some material to fill out the story, and that brings me to point number 3. If you're cutting stuff, make sure it's stuff that the story still functions without, and if you're adding stuff, Make sure that the stuff that you're adding serves a purpose for the narrative and that it's actually somewhat decent. The stuff they cut out it's obvious. It's the way too fucking long fight scenes with characters that literally have no impact on the story. Like, seriously, fuck you, Don Krieg, I could not care less about you. As for what they added, again, it's been a while, so I'm not completely sure, but I think they added some material to help flesh out the Marines, who are the primary antagonistic force of the series. And while Julia and Vicious and Bebop were just frustrating, conversely, Kobe, Helmeppo, and Vice Admiral Garp actually did a lot to win me over in between the Straw Hats' adventures, and they really help spell out an overarching plot that our heroes are not yet privy to. I've never really been much of a One Piece guy. I mostly only followed Naruto in high school, and it wasn't until a few years later that I finally dove in and gave a look to some of the other major shonen shows that I missed during that time. I read 4 volumes of the One Piece manga from the local library before discovering that they also had the first several DVD collections of the Funimation dub. And of that, I watched about 120 episodes while simultaneously playing Sid Meier's Pirates on another screen. All in all, it fared better than my samplings of Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Soul Eater, most of which I barely remember. But I did eventually give up on One Piece because I just wasn't invested and wasn't too interested in seeing if another 120 episodes would change that. Which is why this adaptation is a success, because not only does it actually arguably improve on the experience, but it does what an adaptation is supposed to do, namely, grow the fanbase by bringing in new people who wouldn't otherwise be interested. Namely me! And it does so whilst being far more economical with its time, covering about 45 to 60 episodes worth of anime content in a svelte 8 episodes. So even if I wasn't totally sure about this series just yet, I'd probably be a lot more inclined to gamble on a hypothetical second season after this showing, rather than having to power through 300 some episodes of anime to get to the fucking time skip when apparently it gets good for realsies. And I really do hope for more of this. The cast is all quite wonderful and lively, not a bad performance in the bunch. When Luffy gets to be a goof, Godoy really shines, but everyone here is really putting all their heart into their roles. The whimsical world of the manga, with its somewhat polarizing art style, is translated to screen in a delightful matchup of styles reminiscent of Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, crossed with Pirates of the Caribbean. I can quite easily see this being this generation's Harry Potter. I shouldn't be surprised if licensed merch and attire starts clogging up the shelves at Target and Walmart within a year or so. Some of the visual effects are a little shaky still, yes, the Devil Fruit powers and Sea Beasts in particular, and I'm apprehensive about how they'll interpret a character such as Chopper, but the action is lively, the costumes are delightful, and the cinematography sells this exciting high-seas swashbuckling. I'd also heard a rumor that Jamie Lee Curtis had expressed a strong interest in playing the character Kureha for the series. And you know, I hope that she gets that. Not just because she's a good actress, but because I'm excited to see people you wouldn't normally anticipate being the target demo admit to being fans. All our favorite stuff can and will find audiences across demographics if we give those stories the chance to reach more people, and that's why I'm such a strong advocate for adaptation. I think it's really cool when grandparents can relate to grandchildren through a shared love of Pokemon or Star Wars or TikTok dances or whatever. Then we're not just a bunch of crotchety old boomers or disrespectful young punks in each other's eyes. We're generations able to bridge the gap through love for cool things and ideas. I don't know, I just think it's neat that Zoomer teens share weirdo niche fandoms with people like Snoop Dogg, Sam Jackson, Quentin Tarantino, Tobey Maguire, Bill Burr, John Cena, Rihanna, and the late great Robin Williams. I'll admit that I've kind of been wondering if I shouldn't go back and re-examine One Piece for myself, and that's thanks in no small part to a lot of people talking up the theme's presence in the work that I have a new appreciation for. I'm a fan of Hassan Piker, noted One Piece fan, and he's gotten some attention lately for pointing out that within the world of One Piece, Luffy would be considered a terrorist. They're called pirates within the fiction, but they don't act like the types of pillaging and plundering rapscallions that term implies. They're freedom fighters. They push back against the oppressive institution of the world government and their violent military forces, the Navy and Cypher Pole. But to the world government, that makes them terrorists. And the only difference between a terrorist and a rebel/freedom fighter when you get right down to it is whether or not you believe the establishment power is the more or less righteous force in that dynamic. American separatists in the Revolutionary War? To the British, those are terrorists. The Mujahideen brigades? To Palestinians, they might be considered freedom fighters. The Netflix show is making it very clear from early on, much clearer than I remember the anime being, that the Marines are the less righteous force than the Straw Hats, and that Luffy's vision of being a pirate, a free soul who does what he believes in, damn the man, is the more admirable way of life despite the negative brand of outlaw he's been labeled with. When the law is unjust and those who enforce it are corrupt, then being an outlaw is actually the righteous course. And I appreciate the strong intentionality on behalf of the Netflix series. The one bummer, though, is that the success of this adaptation likely kills any hopes I have for an adaptation of Space Pirate Captain Harlock, which I mentioned wanting back again in my Zaorhymer video, self-plug. The noble anarchist sentiments of Harlock and Luffy and the overall themes of their stories are virtually identical. It's just that Harlock's version is a lot more dour and melancholy, strongly influenced by mangaka Leiji Matsumoto's upbringing in post-war Japan, and his connection to his father, a former naval commander in World War II. And that kind of energy makes for a little bit of a harder sell to the types of audiences this media would be courting, as opposed to One Piece's whimsical, brightly colored hope punk vibes. As much as I like Harlock's story, his supporting cast of Daiba, Toshiro, Yataran, Kei, and Mime can't really compare to Nami, Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp. Not to say that there isn't an appeal to Harlock's smoldering, mysterious, Byronic pretty boy flair. I would probably cast someone like Sebastian Shaw in the role. But strip away the sex appeal, and he and Luffy are functionally the same. Both value freedom and autonomy and the well-being of others over all, eschewing wealth and decadence. Both crave adventure and go out of their way to aid and protect anyone who needs it, accepting no reward beyond what is freely given, and plundering from those who hoard resources. Both are characterized as scoundrels and outlaws by the bourgeois governments who like the way things are, and who are threatened by these nomadic revolutionaries going from place to place, upsetting the status quo. Both are captains, but respect the individual motivations and quirks of their crew of misfits, leading primarily through effective recruiting of like-minded individuals and coordinating of their chaotic skills into a functional unit. And here I am bemoaning the wholesome pirate boy supplanting the broody goth guy with the eye patch and a drinking problem after spending a bunch of time at the start whinging about people not giving Superman a fair shot. So hey, however the ANCOM message gets out, I suppose. I guess that at least makes the bitter pill of me being wrong in my predictions that much easier to swallow. DBiddles, when are you ever right in your predictions? Hey, shut the fuck up. Nah, but for real though, very pleased with One Piece live action. Netflix, please hurry up and give your cast, crew, writers, and actors everything they fucking ask for and rightfully deserve, so I can get season 2 of this that much sooner. Anyways, that's all the important stuff for now. Thanks for watching another episode of the Brick Edition. Be sure to push all the buttons down below and boost my engagement analytics. I wouldn't be too surprised if another couple Brick Edition videos come out soon. Until then, I'm DBiddles. Sayonara, adios.